Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and friendship. And I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to have a moment of transparency with you about Dungeons and Dragons and friendship. Now, this is a freestanding video. You don't have to go watch the video I did before this, but I am doing this video because a very kind commenter who watches, I think, the majority of my content, my long form content, and has watched literally for years and understands my content as a personal journey, like literally understands my history and understands my content in context to my history. That is astounding. Like, I'm really amazed that somebody knows years of Scott Garibay history and years of what I've been doing right here on this channel. Like, it really is, I would consider, a subject matter expert on my channel itself. And he came on and he said, "Hey, I listened to that video, but did I miss something? I didn't really understand what you were saying." And he's 100% right. Like, I didn't drive the nail fully into the board yesterday, so I'm going to do that now. So what did I talk about yesterday? I talked about Dungeons and Dragons and friendship, and I tried to have a moment of transparency. I said, the reason I am a terrible friend. I believe this is a fundamental truth of Scott Garibay, in my humble opinion. I'm a terrible friend. It's just a limitation of me, right? I've never been a good friend to anyone, right? It's just, I'm not saying I'm a terrible person. I'm not saying I'm a person without value. I'm saying this is a limitation of myself, and I'm 54 years old, and I follow two people. I followed Jesus Christ, and I would sacrifice everything in a minute for him, right? Literally everything, right? Like, there's no limits to what I would do for Jesus Christ, right? Abraham and Isaac, right? Like, yeah, like, okay. And I follow Gary Gygax. There are absolutely limits to what I would do for Gary Gygax, right? But he is a fundamental guiding principle, he's a guiding mentor to me. You're like, wait a second, he's dead. Yeah, that's right. You're right. It's unusual. Okay. So I realized all this has to do with Dungeons and Dragons. I appreciate your patience. I'm going to get to the point here. I've realized a truth about myself. I am an absolutely abominable, horrible friend. I have never been a good friend to anyone. And the reason why is principles and concepts and things that the rest of the world does not believe are real are far more important to me than any friend I've ever had, right? Like, I would sacrifice all my friends rather than never read about Gary Gygax again or never read his work again. And by the way, I consider every Dungeons & Dragons canon hardback ever written Gary Gygax's work, right? His legacy is in every book, right? And so, like, and that's a terrible thing to say. And I am a terrible friend. It's just something and why am I saying this, and why am I even talking about it? Because I am self-aware. Why am I self-aware? Because of Gary Gygax, right? I look at his life, and I have studied his life, and there were times where he was no longer self-aware. 1986, he'd gone to Hollywood to get a D&D movie. He got the D&D Saturday morning cartoon, but he also came back with a terrible habit, right? that Dave Thomavor named directly on his channel, right? And that is even, I think at this point, openly discussed on his Wikipedia page, right? Came back with this absolutely terrible habit, right? That made him lose all self-control and all self-awareness, right? And he had a moment of lucidity and said, I know what to do. Get Lorraine Williams. She's going to carry Dungeons and Dragons forward from 1986 going forward for, I don't think he knew the amount of years. It turned out to be 11 years. And Lorraine Williams fixed every problem Gary created and instilled incredible value into Dungeons & Dragons. And also treated TSR like a husk, which she should have. TSR was nothing. D&D was the whole thing. Also, just so you're aware, I firmly believe that D&D is bigger than any company that owns it. Far more valuable than any company will ever own it. D&D is a cultural icon and is a stream of cultural content in American history. Companies are shells, right? Like, they're husks. Right? Like, I don't know if there's really ever been a company that is, bigger than the ideas D&D transcends any company that owns it. Okay, so let me stay super focused here. What's the point? Okay, so I'm aware I'm an absolutely abominable friend. So 2024 has changed, and this is the part where I want to be super transparent with you, because every day I tell you this is how D&D should be done, right? There's a right way and there's a wrong way. So that puts an obligation of transparency on me, right? And so here's the transparency. I have reduced my dungeon mastering and my dragon mastering by 2/3 in 2024 on purpose. And the reason why was 2023, 2022, 2021 were catastrophic for my D&D years. In that, I lost a ton of friends, and one campaign ended abruptly. One campaign ended abruptly because I had someone who betrayed me in that campaign, in my humble opinion. However, I do have self-awareness that I'm an incredibly bad friend, so maybe there was reason for that betrayal, but the betrayal was still real, right? It still hurt, right? So, yeah. So that's what I wanted to tell you is I have a D&D problem. Now, what is the problem? I am a terrible, terrible friend. It's just a fundamental truth about myself that I know. I know it at this point, right? Where that becomes a problem from a Dungeons and Dragons perspective is right now, Dungeons and Dragons is only structured to be played with friends. People don't understand playing Dungeons and Dragons with people who are not your friends. And that's what I need at this point. The way everything I believe about Dungeons and Dragons is so unique, right? And I'm so intense and adamant about it that I need people who are going to disconnect D&D from friendship to play it to do D&D the way I intend to do D&D. I don't play D&D. I don't even play D&D anymore. I pursue D&D and I execute D&D and I do D&D. I do not play it, and this is confusing for people. And it is highly confused, and I have no problems with this. I'm totally fine losing friends for the sake of Dungeons and Dragons, and to drive my knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons. But the cost of that, the personal cost of that to other people, right, in 2021, 2022, and 2023 was so high that I'm like, wait a second, you're comfortable sacrificing everything in the world for Gary Gygax, sacrificing not everything. There's definite limits. There's like 5 things I will not sacrifice for D&D. D&D is the 4th most important thing in my life. I'm very aware of my hierarchy. I'm very aware of my priorities. And D&D is only the 4th most important thing in my life, right? And so I won't sacrifice everything, but people are like, you're willing to burn entire structures for D&D in your life. That's 100% true. I believe that what I understand about Dungeons, I believe I'm the foremost expert in the world on D&D canon, the foremost expert in the world on Gary Gygax. And you're like, wait a second, a bunch of people wrote academic treatises on it. That's right. And the prejudice was so high and the misogyny was so high, it invalidates all their work. I believe that about Ben Grimm. I don't think any of his work is worth even reading, because his misogyny about Lorraine Williams is so high. His intention to destroy her legacy is so high, it invalidates all his work, in my humble opinion, right? So I believe I'm the foremost expert on Gary Gygax in the world. I believe I'm absolutely, in my humble opinion, the foremost expert on D&D canon. I don't think anybody has any idea what's actually happening on D&D canon. It's so profound and so unusual, and the shape of it is so odd and so unprecedented, right? And I actually believe also at this point I'm the foremost expert on D&D lore. All of it, right? You're 100% right. You can find some scrub grognard that knows more about 2nd edition than I do, but they don't even know the names of the D&D canon books that have come out now. If you look at D&D lore from February 7, 1974, I'm the foremost expert on it. I know more about it than anything in the world, than anyone in the world. I'm convinced of this, right? So, but the intensity, the adamancy that I pursue this at has cost real people real pain, right? And so this year I'm like, I got to stop and figure this out, right? So I only have a few remaining campaigns and a few where I am dungeon mastering, and a few remaining campaigns where I'm dragon mastering, and I'm actively turning down requests to play, requests to dungeon master, and very carefully trying to take 2024 to figure out, how do I do what I want to do and continue to drive a style of D&D participation that exists nowhere else without hurting people, because people get confused, they get caught up in it, they're expecting one thing and they get another, right? I'm saying, yeah, what I want to do is I want to give you the most powerful Dungeons and Dragons experience that's ever been established anywhere, at any table, right? And at the same time, don't expect friendship from me. That is completely bizarre and very, like, upsetting to people because they don't understand it. And it's very legitimate that they would not understand it, because there's literally no one on the planet trying to do with Dungeons and Dragons what I'm doing. And so one of the things I want to say is, I'm telling you, I recently saw Fallout, and there's a perfect analogy. Everyone in the world is a vault dweller on D&D. They're all just cutting goblins in half, you know, swilling down beer and eating another pretzel when they play. There's no stakes. There's nothing being accomplished, right? They're all in the vault, and they're comfortable, and nothing they do matters, right? I'm in the wastegate. I'm above the vaults, right? And everything there is jagged and dangerous and unknown, right? And I used to be very comfortable bringing people into space, but you know, as I became self-aware, I realized this is confusing and uncomfortable for people, right? So I want you to understand. So what I'm saying is, I want you to understand that if you go where I'm going, people are not going to understand it. It's going to be jagged and uncomfortable. There's going to be dangerous, unknown things in your space, and I want that to be known. I don't want people to confuse what I'm doing here with what the dungeon dudes are doing. You can go listen to them. Every video they've ever done, nothing's ever going to challenge you. It's not going to make you think about your social obligations to the human race and individuals you meet. But where I'm at, this is the wastegate, right? And I want everybody to be aware what I'm doing comes with an incredible cost, right? And what I'm trying to do in 2024 is figure out a way to make that cost be paid only by me. And I don't ever want another friend to realize, oh my gosh, Scott Garibay cares way more about Dungeons and Dragons than he ever did about me, which is true with every friend I have, right? And I need to try to find a way to be upfront with people about that, right? And that's what I'm using 2024 for. And I am dungeon mastering very few campaigns and dragon mastering very few campaigns and adding none, right? And I do plan to add more in 2025 if I found a way to do it so that it doesn't impact other people's lives, right? Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.